Father, thank you so much for your word, for your just Lord, that we have that sense of knowing where we can find truth, which seems to be a difficult thing in these days. And so we just ask, Lord, for your help right now. I just pray your blessing on Gil and his family, the children, Lord, each one of them, Lord, that they will know your presence in their lives and your closeness to them. And we just give this time to you right now and ask that you will bless Gil as he shares with us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So, come on, fire away. Question.
um, yeah, so I'll start with a really basic question, but what's life like now for the majority of people in Israel right now? I say the majority, I mean those who are not displaced, either from the south or from the north on the border with Lebanon. Like, for instance, I know you have a brother who lives in the north, but he's still able to be home. But how is it now? Like, I'm coming back on the 4th, so tell me what I'm coming
Um,
back to, you know?
well, it's we could say that in every area which is not near the border, I guess we could say that things are almost as normal. I mean, when I say almost as normal, I mean that places are open, school system is working. You don't have restrictions in terms of moving from one place to another. I mean, the places where you feel the war could be maybe like in homes in which still, let's say, the father is recruited. He's there in either in the southern border or in the northern border, and the mother is all by herself with the children. You feel it maybe in, let's say, in a school, in a high school yeshiva, like the one that my boys are attending. Then there, I mean, most of the staff of teachers, these are men teachers. So you basically have many of them being recruited, and so the learning routine is not really back to normal there. So they have shorter days because they have shortages in staff. But other than that, I mean, if you come, I mean, it's not like we hear sirens right now, or there aren't any launchings of rockets towards base almost anywhere, basically. We could say that the IDF more or less got control over the area in that regards. The places where you do feel the war, these are the places which are next to the border, and there it's something completely different. I mean, we have now about 150,000 evacuees, both from the northern border and from the southern border. In Israel, I mean, all over Israel, we have 56,000 hotel rooms in all of Israel. That means that most of the hotels, hostels, anything that can take people in, all these places are basically packed, okay, with people evacuated from their homes. And these are people that live right, I mean, they're like the first ring from the borders, either either the northern or the southern.
Mm.
The situation for the evacuees is very complicated. I mean, you have families, for example, in which, let's say, the mother is evacuated with the children, but the father is actually in the military. I mean, he's recruited, and he's fighting in Gaza, and his wife and children are in a hotel room, let's say, in Tel Aviv. I mean, sometimes you have like 4 or 5 people, in one hotel room, because there isn't enough room for everybody. I saw the other day that there are hotels that have grounds around them, that the government built glamping tents on those grounds. But this is winter time. I mean, there is rain, and it's colder, and it's not a way to live. Not a way to live. And the government is trying to do what it can to help them. So, for example, the government is taking, let's say, residential buildings that have just now finished to build them. Okay, but still the not all the apartments are sold, or maybe the entire complex hasn't gone for sale yet. So the government is taking that, is leasing those places and enabling evacuees to go and live there. So you have, for example, whole communities from the south that take, for example, take a whole kibbutz. They put them in two big buildings, two very tall buildings, and the entire community lives in such way. It's of course it's something completely different than what they are used to, being in a kibbutz and
Yeah.
all the fields and the open spaces, and all of a sudden they live in the 30th floor in Tel Aviv. It's quite different, but if that's something to, I mean, everybody can handle that kind of challenge, let's put it this way. I
Right.
mean, for many people, who are evacuated, it's a big struggle. It's a big struggle because even if the mothers, for example, even if they have a job, they can't really go to work because they're not in their home, and the kids are out of the school system. There are supplementary programs. Let's say there are kindergarten teachers and school teachers coming to the hotels or where the evacuees are, and work with the children, but it's still not it's not by 100%. I mean, it doesn't cover all the areas that need to be covered. So in that regards, there is still a very big struggle. Other than that, situation you could say is more or less, I would say, so to speak, normal. There are a lot of people that have space in their houses. Let's say older parents that their children are grown and they don't live in the house anymore, and they have spare bedrooms, and they invite people, evacuated people, to come and live with them. You have all kinds of innovations like that, organizations, in social media, to try and help as much as possible. Having said that, I mean, you asked about my
Yeah.
brother. My brother lives in the he lives in the northern he lives in the north, on the second ring of the northern borders, and but they refuse to leave their house because they say, we just don't know how long it's going to take once we leave. So we rather, just push it to the latest, just to stay home as much as we can. And once we need to do that, then we'll do it. But before we really have to, before they have a soldier knocking on their door saying you have to be evacuated, we're not going to leave. Even though it comes with a price, because they hear all the bombings from the border. It's right there. It's right there. I mean, in the backyard, so to speak.
Wow.
So it comes with a price, but they still prefer to do it like that.
So we were hearing on our news that reservists who've been able to go home for a bit are now
Mhm.
being recalled to Gaza. Is that what you hear too?
Well, the right now the military, I mean, there isn't, I mean, the military doesn't really advertise their plans. They don't make it known to the public because they don't want the enemies to listen to it and know what their plans are. I
Right.
mean, we know the calendar, and we know that in a little bit just a little bit under just a little bit less than a month time from now, it'll be the beginning of the month of Ramadan. And we know that once, from experience, we know that once, when our enemies, when they have a holiday or something like that, and when there is a festival, then we know that it's a potential time for increased amount of terror activity. So the military is sending some people home, but they only do it to a limited amount of time. So they say they all go home, but with a date when they need to get to be back. And so, and not it's not, it doesn't come as a shock when most of them say that they got the date of March the 8th. I mean, March the 8th is right before the month of Ramadan is about to begin. So so they're all going back more or less during that time. It's not all soldiers who are going back, not all reserve forces, and even if the reserve forces are going on a leave for like 3 4 weeks, still the regular forces they stay put, of course.
Right.
I mean, you know, when you have a long, when you think about it for the long run, you have to, you know that you have to send people home to rest, to be with their families, to be with their children, to catch up with things, catch up with work. I mean, people need that. They can't be totally disconnected. And that's actually another thing that we are now we are about to be challenged by, and that is you know, people going back home after they haven't been there for a long period of time, for almost 4 months. I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about, I mean, think about the reserve forces, people in their 30s, early 40s, kind of like midlife situation, and all of a sudden they get a break from that and they become heroes, right? I mean, so you know they become heroes. They go on uniform. They walk on the street. They get all this sympathy and encouragement and admiration, and people want to, like, you know, give them and provide for them as much as and to show gratitude. I mean, as long as they're wearing the uniform, and now they're going back home, they're going to take off the uniform, and they're going to be regular people, and that might create a bit of a shock. So that the military is also taking that into consideration and giving all soldiers going back. They have 2 days they have to spend in the base and spend it with psychologists, social workers, you know, preparing them for what it's going to be like when they go back. So they have all kinds of workshops and talks and, you know, things that can really equip them emotionally. What is it going to be like when they go back home? You know,
Mm.
they're going to meet very tired wives and children who are out of you know, they're out of their center. They're not quite in their center because they haven't had a normal home functioning for the last 4 months. It's going to be a challenge, you know, to pick all that up, to bring it together again.
For sure.
So yeah, so our society is taking that into account, and the military is trying to help as much as possible. And you know, there are the less optimistic people say that we are about to see a wave of divorce, and the more optimistic people say we're going to see a baby boom reaction. So we're going, you know, so it's and the rest of the people on the spectrum between those two prophecies, let's say.
Right. One of the questions I had actually came in from Donna. Said, "Are you beginning, Gil? Are you beginning to feel that the tides are turning against Israel right now?
What do you mean the tides are turning against? I mean,
That there's more and more criticism.
oh
Um,
yeah, by the day. Oh yeah, of course. Every day. Every day. I mean, and we also knew that. I mean, we knew that our government knew that. And right from the beginning, the government, you know, there were voices in from within that said, let's go in fast. Let's do it quickly. Let's do it as swift as we can, because the world won't give us a long time, you know, before they begin to criticize everything that's happening. Okay, and we knew that. And every day, I mean, you hear the tone of speech, you hear attitudes of governments, leaders who were very much standing alongside Israel and very much pro-Israel and supportive at the beginning, are now changing their skin. We have an expression. You know,
mhm,
they change their skin. They change the tone of speech. We see less support. We see that also not just by saying, you know, Israel is doing this or Israel is doing that, but take, for example, a decision of I'm just going to I'm just going to take it as an example. But take, for example, a decision made by the British Foreign Affairs Ministry,
mhm,
and so they put up a travel warning to Israel ever since October the 7th. Okay, now they know, or they must know, that if somebody is coming to Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv is not a war zone. It's not. I mean, it's far enough from the borders. There haven't been rockets launched, fired towards Tel Aviv, over the last like 2 months, 2.5 months. It's not a dangerous place. Yet there is still a travel warning. Now, how is this? How is this political? Because once there is a travel warning, then all insurance agencies, they won't give travel insurance to people who want to come to Israel. Now, you have a lot of people, Jewish people from England, who want to come and visit their grandchildren. They haven't seen them for 4 months. Okay, they want to be with their grandchildren. They want to come and meet their children. There are volunteers who want to come and help. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons to travel to Israel, academic reasons, work. I mean, there are, high-tech cooperations, all sorts of reasons. But as long as there isn't any kind of travel insurance, then people can't travel. And that hurts Israel very much. Israel is asking to remove the travel warning or to minimize the travel warning, but they're using it as some kind of leverage against Israel and say, well, if you want us to remove it, then you should take the terms for a ceasefire, make sure the war ends, or cut, just reduce the amount of response that you're doing in Gaza, or something that any government would like to say to Israel. It's almost like blackmailing.
Except
It's like,
people can, you can travel without insurance.
of course you can, but people who are grandparents. I mean, I have clients of mine. They're grandparents. I mean, there are people in their 70s. They won't travel without a health insurance. They're not going to do that. Okay, they're going to take the risk. So now there are Israeli insurance companies, and they give travel insurance to people coming from abroad to encourage people to come and to solve the problem for them. I mean, and so it's very challenging. So you can see that it's not just what a government spokesman would say in front of a microphone. It's not just that. It's also by little decisions like that to keep a travel warning, not to go to Israel. That has a lot of effect on the economy and of course on our politicians.
Right. That's yeah, it's really interesting. Right near the beginning of everything after October the 7th, and when the war first started, it seemed there was a lot of on the news about the families putting pressure on the government. Bring back our families,
You
bring
mean families of the hostages?
the hostages, yes. And so uh, we're not hearing that so much about that right now. Is there still a,
Oh, very much.
is it very much
Very
bring back
much.
the hostages and stop the war, or is it just bring back the hostages?
I'll tell you what, well, as for now, there are 134 hostages. I mean, no one can say that, well, nobody can say that they have one, that, 130 families, they have one opinion. Okay, I mean, 134 families, that's like 1,000 opinions in Israel. Okay, so I mean, they can't, they don't make anything, they don't make any decision unanimously. So you have families that say, bring them home now. Okay, they use the word now.
No.
And that's a very strong statement. Bring them home now. That means take any terms of any deal, agree to anything that Hamas has to put on the table, agree to everything, release all Palestinian prisoners, including terrorists who have taken part on October the 7th. Bring into Gaza any amount of supplies of aid that they want, any kind, no limitations, no restrictions. When you say bring them home now, that means that no matter what the cost is.
Right.
Okay, and that's one approach. Okay, that's one end of the spectrum.
Right.
The complete other end of the spectrum, and that's, I must say, these are usually families who come from an observant, religious, faith-based background. And there are many of those. There are many families like that, and they say no. They say, the blood of my son is not any more red than the blood of any any other Israeli civilian that might be in danger as consequence of an irresponsible decision when we go to make a deal with the devil.
Right.
And in other words, they say let's prioritize the targets here, and we understand if you don't put the bringing if you don't put bringing back the hostages as your first priority. We get it, we understand it, and we are supportive of that, and we know that our children or our family members being held as hostages, they would agree with that. They wouldn't want to know that 7,000 Palestinian prisoners with blood on their hands are now walking free on the streets and preparing the next October the 7th just in order for them to be released.
Right.
They say our family members wouldn't want that, and we don't want that because they have an observation that they look at the people of Israel. They don't see their own personal narrative. They don't experience it on an individual level. They take it. They look at the whole, and they say that in the overall account for the nation, we need to do what is good for the nation, not what is good to my brother or what is good to my son. As much as painful as it is, as painful. And now I'm not the one saying it. I'm quoting parents to children who are being held right now in Gaza,
Right.
and they say it. And they say we can't be irresponsible, even when it means to pay that price. 134 people are not any more important than 8 million. And as emotional as it is, and as badly as we want them back and we want them here with us, we need to be responsible.
Yeah.
There is we need to be we can't agree to end to all things.
Mm.
And in between you have others. Okay, so you have those who say bring them home now. You have those who don't say it at all. That's the one that I've just now explained. And in between you have people who say bring them back.
Right.
Okay, but they don't add the word now. So there are all sorts of little things that really make a difference.
Right. And as we see, with all of the interference of nations or threat of interference, threat of withdrawing funds, all the rest towards Israel, the question that goes through my mind: could Israel afford to go it alone? I mean, outside of the fact that, maybe at that very point is when we would see God really move on behalf of the nation.
Well, that's why I'm laughing, because
Yeah,
when has Israel ever been alone?
right.
Is our togetherness, or our lack of lack of feeling being alone, does that depend on any government out there in the world? Or us not being alone, does that mean that we have the Lord on our side? That we are with him, and we trust in him. Who do we trust? Do
So
we
is that the
trust
bottom line? Are you saying then if America pulls out all of its funding, then we're more dependent on the Lord?
if anybody decides not to stand alongside Israel and pull funds, not to be supportive or anything, or even go against Israel, actively. That's my humble opinion, but I think they need to fear for themselves. This battle is not our battle, it's God's. On October the 7th, a vicious attack happened against the people. This was an Amalek style attack. Okay, I'm not saying that anybody is Amalek, because I haven't run any DNA tests, but I am saying that it's Amalek style. Okay, it's Amalek like. Okay, they came and they attacked. If you read carefully in scriptures, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, they attacked at the rear ranks. They attacked. They took. Look at the pictures of the people held in as hostages,
Mm.
women and children and elderly people. They didn't go for soldiers armed. They went after easier prey, and the way they attacked, the kind of violence that we are now hearing evidence of the kind of violence that they've used against their victims. That's the spirit of Amalek. That comes from pure evil. Amalek came to fight against the Lord himself. They came to fight against the existence of the Lord. This and the Lord gave a command to his people to fight and vanquish Amalek and to eliminate Amalek completely. And again, I'm not saying that anybody is Amalek, but I'm saying if something comes from the spirit of Amalek, we don't have to feel apologetic or afraid to look at it and say that's evil. And we know how we need to face evil. Now, that makes the whole war not something which is which is any more earthy, more than spiritual. It's a spiritual war, and we know that we see the kind of messages that our enemies are fighting with, and those messages are completely spiritual from their side of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not just a physical thing. Now, if there are governments who refuse to accept that, who refuse to believe in that, and they choose to make their decisions based on, I don't know, political considerations, or I don't know, maybe they think that they are more moral than the people of God who has been marching in the world for 3,800 years, and have seen everything and have done everything and have the most detailed system of moral behavioral code. If they think that they have a better morals than that, then they can pull up their funds. I don't think that there is I don't think this is what makes us be together with anybody. Okay, if somebody thinks that they can buy the state of Israel and to pay their way in making Israel do what they want, then they're mistaken.
Yeah.
Israel is not for sale. Israel belongs to one God. We belong to him, and he is using us as a vessel. He's using us as pawns in his hand. And it's not up to us to say we're going to stop this. Okay, or it's not up to us to say, oh yeah, of course we prefer American dollars over the will of our maker. Of course, that's not we can't do that. So
Mm.
if anybody wants to stop their support of Israel because they don't think that Israel is doing the right thing, so be it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm saying I'm only giving my humble opinion. I mean, I didn't see Joshua making these kinds of considerations when he came into the land of Canaan and had to occupy it, making all kinds of considerations to find favor in the Philistines' eyes. And okay, so I won't do this, even though God asked me to. I'm not going to fight against Jericho, even though God asked me, because people might say that I am too brutal by doing so, and they might not be supportive of me. No, no, they had we need to fix our eyes on our Father in heaven, and we need to be very sensitive in trying to hear what he has to say about the matter, not about what any world leader has to say about the matter.
Mm.
How little do they know, and how much does he know? It's that's just something to it's important to say it. I'm not saying it, out of feeling of irresponsibility or anything like that. This is what it is. We I mean, you can't. If somebody is being supportive of Israel just in order to be able to tell it what to do, then that's like bribery. That's like that's corruption. You don't do that. You're being supportive because you want to be supportive, because you believe that that person needs that kind of support. And the Bible is full of prophecies telling us what will happen to nations who will stand alongside Israel and what will happen to nations which won't. I don't need to, I'm sure you all know that yourselves. So
Gil, I have two more questions before I just want to let you kind of just go with it. But one more about the just the situation in Israel in general right now. Since the war started, has the atmosphere changed in Judea Samaria, or as known as the West Bank? Has it? Would you say there's been a change there?
okay, so Judea and Samaria is okay. Since October the 7th, there have been over 3,000 arrest cases in Judea and Samaria against terror activists. Over 3,000 arrests. Okay, you have policemen and soldiers arresting people who were on their way or they were planning to go and be on their way to commit terror attacks. That number is not a usual number. Okay, so we can definitely say that there are more active terror cells in Judea and Samaria now than there used to be before October the 7th. Yes.
Are there actually
The
more?
atmosphere,
Are there
sorry.
actually more, or is Israel taking more care to make sure that the
In this kind of number, like more than 3,000, I would say that there is more. Okay, there is more attempt. You know, they're trying to attack on the rear ranks. They know that we have most of our forces in the northern border and on the southern border, and they're trying to do their part. Okay, let's do it from the heartland, and let's try to make it fall from within. So I would say that there is more activity. I mean, that's what we see. But I can't say that it changed the atmosphere in terms of the settlers. In terms of the people living here, I can't say that it changed anything. On the contrary, we see an increased number of people wanting to come and live in Judea and Samaria, and we see an increased response of building more and planting more and doing all kinds of social innovations, as response to the threat that we are experiencing. And so I can't say that it changed the atmosphere in terms of the settlers, but we definitely see more active terror cells working since October the 7th. Yes.
Mm. Okay, now this is a tough question, which I think probably people from outside of Israel may have had to deal with many times. So I hear all the time, what about the innocent Gazans? Is it enough for us to say this is war and this is what happens in wars? I mean, how do we respond to that sort of accusation of what about the children? What about the children? As people who love God and love all those He's created, how do we respond to that? What's our answer?
Okay. I'll give like the so-called simple answer at the beginning. Okay, the simple answer is that this question should be asked and it should be and it should be dealt with, but not in the context of Israel. It's in the context of the leaders of Hamas.
Mhm.
It's in the context of the leaders from the Palestinian side, the Gazan Palestinian side, because you know that the Palestinian society is divided. There is the West Bank and there is Gaza. So the people in Gaza voted for a Hamas government. There has been a lot of money that was sent over the years to Gaza from Qatar, from Iran, from Scandinavia, from the EU, from the UN, from America, from Israel as well. Where is that money?
Mm.
How can it be that 5 leaders of Hamas are billionaires running a government that doesn't exist? It's a non-existing government.
Right.
They're the heads of a parliament that doesn't exist, and they are billionaires. While you have, let's take Benjamin Netanyahu being the prime minister of a successful country over 10 years now, a working government, a working economy, a successful country, and he doesn't have those billions.
Right.
How is it possible? How is it rational to anybody to think that they earn that money rightfully? What I'm saying is that there is a lot going on in terms of the responsibility laid on the shoulders of the leaders of Hamas and also the Gazan people. They voted for this government. They never stood up and said anything when their children went to school and were forced upon with educational materials, teaching them how to kill Jews, how to murder women, how to rape women.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say anything. They kept sending their children to those schools.
Wow.
Now, tell me, a question. If somebody when the terrorists came back with their prey, yeah, with their trophies on October the 7th, all those men, women, and children, and a baby, when they came back to Gaza and people were standing on the streets and clapping, are they uninvolved? They didn't do anything. They're not terrorists. Okay, the woman is 70 years of age. She only took candies and threw and handed it out, to people on the streets to celebrate the victory over the Jewish enemy. Is she uninvolved?
Mm-hmm.
How do we even begin to define uninvolved population
Yeah.
in a situation like that? How do you begin to define it? When you have people on the streets throwing pots and pans and rocks even at soldiers as they pass by on the alleys to find locations of terror, are they uninvolved? I mean, they're women, they're not soldiers, they're not in uniform. Are they uninvolved? Can there even be someone who is uninvolved in such a situation? Inside a machine of hatred that fills people up with hatred all along for years now, over more than a decade. They have been feeding their people with hatred. Can we say that there is anybody there who is uninvolved, that we can actually trust him, that he wants the best for Israel, that he wants peace, that he wanted peace before October the 7th?
So
It's
there,
it's a very difficult definition to walk into. Now we're getting to the more complicated thing. So one thing is, how do we define the uninvolved? Second, let's deal with the question of of what's going on to the population. Okay, civil population in Gaza. Fine, but that's not Israel's responsibility. Israel's responsibility is towards Israelis. They are not Israelis. They are Gazan Palestinians. They have their leaders who have stolen their money, and they voted for those leaders, and they kept applauding to those leaders as they went up and gave speeches. It's not Israel's problem. Israel's problem is 134 hostages. Israel's problem is vicious murderers living only 1 or 2 kilometers away from their kibbutzim down in the south.
right.
That's Israel's problem. That's our responsibility. It's not our responsibility to take care of Palestinian people at hospitals. They're not Israelis. It's their leaders' responsibility. Their leaders should have thought about it before they committed that vicious attack 4 months ago. They were the ones who had to think about it. Anybody who has a question, but what about the population? What about the Gazan population? No problem. Address that question to their leaders who are responsible for them. Address that question to the UN. The UN is responsible for all refugees in the world. Do you know that even though there has been a Hamas government in Gaza for more than a decade now, they never made sure that the population in Gaza will be defined as non-refugees. Why? Because they knew that once they will be defined as not being refugees, then the UN will stop taking care of them. the UN will stop sending their money. So those leaders, they have every interest in the world to keep the situation in Gaza as bad as it can be,
Right.
because it serves them best. It justifies their existence. It brings them loads of money to their pockets.
Right.
And we see the evidence, that the Israeli soldiers, they have gone into the homes of those Hamas leaders. They went inside the house and they took pictures of the luxury that they are living in. They took pictures of receipts of jewelry that they were buying in tens of thousands of dollars from all over the world, while people on the streets are considered to be refugees and have nothing, and they are all dependent on UNICEF and UNRWA and all sorts of humanitarian organizations to feed them and educate them and help them.
Right.
And they buy jewelry from all over the world. This is not Israel's responsibility.
So
And I'm going to say one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm going to say one more thing. That question, it's very interesting that this question, what about the civil population? Why?
more it's
What,
more what I hear is not so much that, but what about the babies?
well, let me ask you this. Why hasn't this question been asked since 2005, when the rockets began to be fired towards Sderot and all the kibbutzim in the south?
Mhm.
Why hasn't anybody say, what about the children? What about babies in Sderot, in Ashkelon, in Ashdod, in all the kibbutzim? Why hasn't anybody said anything about that then? 20 years, 20 years, not even once I heard that question when it came to Jewish life. But now, all of a sudden, what about the babies? What about the children? Stop the fighting. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. But where have you been for the last 20 years? When these were our children and babies at risk. Why? It really makes me wonder, where does the question come from? When we hear those questions, where does it come from? From honest, sincere concern to the Palestinians? Or is it just a way to look for, and kind of, I don't know what the word is, but maybe poke Israel in the eye, or put an obstacle in its way? Have we chosen this? What have we done? What has Israel done to choose this kind of situation that we're now in? Who made the choice? Who brought us to this point?
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been us. It hasn't been us, and I refuse to accept. I refuse to accept, even when if somebody says, it's because of your occupation, it's because of your oppression, it's because of your existence in the land and all of that. I'm not going to apologize for that. I am not going to apologize for returning to our homeland after nearly 2,000 years.
Yeah.
We've seen the land exactly as it was promised in the book of Leviticus. God said, I will banish you from the land because if you are unworthy, and I will make the land desolate. And it has been desolate.
Mm-hmm.
No one was able to do anything here. And anybody who knows a little bit of history, who has read just a few books of history, they know that nothing existed here before we returned. The land refused to respond to anybody who came and tried to build something here. The land refused. The sky were made out of steel. The land didn't respond, didn't yield its produce. But starting from 1882, when Jewish people began to return, the land came back to life.
Yes.
It responded. Is it by chance?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because of, the people, even, the first settlers who came, they had no idea what farming was about. They came from Russia, from libraries. They came from the academy. They were poets. They knew nothing about farming lands. especially not in this climate,
Yeah.
which is so different than Russia. But the land responded. They didn't have to know. The land knew. The land knows what it needs to do as long as it is the right person farming it.
Interesting.
And so we're not going to apologize for that.
Mhm.
It's we're not going to apologize for returning. We're not going to apologize for being here. When the children of Israel came from Egypt, they were not apologetic to the people of Jericho or the Ai or anybody else. On the contrary, they had to walk proudly and do what God had sent them to do. So if anybody says, well, it's because of your occupation and oppression and all of that, I would say Israel is the best thing that happened to the Palestinians. It's the best thing that has ever happened to them. It gave them a lot of reason to exist. It gave them a lot of recognition. Nobody knew who the Palestinians were before we came here. Israel is the best thing that happened to them. We give them jobs. They work here. We give them water. We give them electricity. Even now, we give them money on a monthly basis to the West Bank and to Gaza for them to maintain their infrastructure, for desalination of water, for all sorts of things. It's Israel. They could have made such benefit working alongside us, cooperating with us.
Yes.
We could have bettered their lives meaningfully, but instead they chose death. They chose evil. They chose the darkness. And we're not going to take responsibility for that.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you so much. Before we go, you have to tell us some God stories.
Well, I
Because I
think
know that there are plenty. I mean, there's some
there are
really.
plenty, but I really think, just I think the one that it feels almost, I think it's the most relevant one, and I think it's almost, I mean, we can't ignore it, not in this context whatsoever. That yesterday, well, 2 days ago now, then two hostages were rescued, and those two hostages, those two older men, late 60s, early 70s in their life, both of them came from They're Argentinians originally, and it's not for no. We can't help noticing the symbolism in the fact that we've been trying to release hostages with military activity for the last 4 months, and the day when we finally managed to do it, it's this, and we managed to do it with the two originally Argentinian people, hostages, and that is also the day when the president of Argentina came to Israel for the first time, and he prayed at the Western Wall. He cried for the peace of Jerusalem. He cried out for the peace of Israel. He cried for his own people. He interceded for his own people in Argentina. He went to Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum, and he quoted passages from the Jewish Talmud talking about prophecies coming to life. And he said, and he quoted a passage talking about saying that if the prophecies about the destruction have been fulfilled, then all the prophecies about elderly women and children playing on the streets of Jerusalem will be fulfilled as well. And he said, this is what I choose to focus on. I see fulfillment in this place. The day when a non-Jewish president, a world leader, he came to be in Jerusalem and to unconditionally stand alongside Israel, holding on to the Bible, the treasure that we cherish, holding on to scriptures, going to the place of the temple and saying to people there, speaking to them about accelerating the process, bring third temple to the world. We need a temple. A non-Jewish world leader is lecturing us about bring the third temple already. We need it. That is the day when two hostages were rescued, the first two hostages that were ever rescued in a military operation, and they are Argentinians. that's not something we can't look the other way. I mean, we can't tell any other story. I mean, the connection is too strong.
And
Now,
his name?
interestingly enough, the Jewish Talmud is saying that when Mashiach comes, there will be a leader, there will be someone, a leader, someone we don't quite know, but it's a bit foggy there. But there will be someone to be there to open the door for Mashiach to come, to open the door for him. And there are all sorts of opinions what the name of that person will be. And one of the opinions, and all the opinions are giving Hebrew names. And one opinion says that the name of that person to open the door for Mashiach to come will be, and I'm saying it in Aramaic and Old Hebrew. The name is Chivara Levei Rabbi. Chivara Levei Rabbi. The president of Argentina is called Javier. In the Jewish Talmud, it says Chivara, and his name is Javier. And when he came here, he says, I am a student, I'm a follower of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is it's one of the rabbis of a fraction in Judaism, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who lived in America, in Brooklyn. And the Jewish Talmud is saying Chivara Levei Rabbi, and he is Javier, a follower of the Rebbe. And we can't ignore it.
No.
I mean, you can be skeptical, you can be cynical, you can cover your eyes, but you can't be dumb. Okay, I mean, really. I mean, when things are so in front of us, God is putting it in our face. Mashiach is knocking on the door. Mashiach is knocking. God wants us all human beings. It's not just about the Jewish people. Mashiach coming is relevant for all the nations. Read the prophecies. It's all there. It's for all of us. Redemption is for all of us to celebrate together in the courtyards of the temple. Are we going to open the door? Are we going to be brave enough and say, I keep the faith. I'm hearing this, and stand alongside and support a battle that we are fighting for everybody. It's not just our war, it's the world's war. It's light versus darkness. Let us not be mistaken. It's not about Israel and Hamas. It's light and darkness. It's good and evil. That's the narrative of this war. And just I wish us all to really stand on the same spot in this, and pray for one another and encourage one another in the process.
So we pray for you.
Yeah. Gil, can I just say, did you know that his name in Spanish means new house?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
And he talked about the third temple.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. I mean, God is sending us messages to remind us the most obvious things.
Yeah.
If only we remembered.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we will keep praying, and just really keep praying that Israel and those that making decisions will choose to go with God, not holding on to support from any other source but Him.
Amen. Amen. We really, really need to protect those who, the decision makers, and for their protection, for their clear mind, for their ability to hear what God is saying to them.
Yes.
And not to be disturbed by and being subject to pressure, any kind of pressure, international or domestic. They need to really be able to listen to God, to hear Him, and to follow what He has to say.
Yeah. Bless you. Thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you very much for the opportunity.